Hey everyone, it's Melanie. Welcome back to my channel. It's another dark and gloomy day here in Southern California, so I apologize for how dark it is in here. It's still daytime, I promise. Today's video, sewing, is back on my channel. We are going to be making this vinyl wallet. Really easy sewing tutorial. This is a mermaid style, which my daughter is very excited about, and I am too. I've been giving these away as gifts to my girlfriends for various things. I'm putting a little gift card in here, so that's a great way to utilize this as well. All the measurements and all the details will be on the blog, which will be linked down below. And if you like my videos, give me a thumbs up. That really helps with getting this video seen by more people. Let's share the love of handmade. Woo woo. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention to you really quick for my sewers and my quilters out there, I am working on my quilt along for 2019. I only do these once a year, and I have a wait list getting started so that you can be the first to know. They sell out really fast. I will put the link down below. It doesn't mean that you're signing up for anything. It just means that you're going to be on that email list to get information as soon as I have more information for you. So I wanted to make sure to share that here as well. All right, that's it. Let's learn how to make this adorable little wallet. Hint, hint. More vinyl projects coming soon, so if you happen to buy pieces larger than what you need for this wallet, the next 2 videos will be there for you. Let's get started. Hi everyone! I want to go over the materials that you're going to need to make this wallet. First, you're going to need some vinyl. Now, this is a mermaid style vinyl. I'll have the link of where I got it in the description box, but you can get a lot of vinyl from Joann's or online. This is just typical vinyl. It's got sort of that soft back. So for this one wallet, you only need a 4.5 inch by 11 inch piece. But if you buy a bigger piece, you can make multiple wallets as gifts, or I have some other vinyl projects coming up. Also clear vinyl. This is an optional step, but it does create that outer ID pocket, 4.5 by 3. All those measurements are going to be listed out on the blog post as well for you to refer to later. Okay, so the other thing you need is clips. I like clover clips. You don't want to use pins with vinyl because then they'll poke a hole and you can't get that out. Okay, so you want to use clips. Also, when you're cutting your vinyl, you can use a rotary cutter or a pair of scissors, whatever you would like to use. You can make pencil marks on the other side. So if you don't know how to use a rotary cutter, just make your marks with a nice straight edge with a pencil on the back side and use scissors to cut it. With vinyl, you also need a larger needle, 100/16. So that is the needle size, is a little bit thicker needle, and you need a fresh one because you can imagine piercing through that vinyl. You really need to have a fresh needle to pierce through that vinyl. Right, the other thing that you need is a polyester thread. We want a nice strong thread to get through several layers of the vinyl. So you want to use polyester coordinating thread because you will see it when we do our stitches. All right, so once you cut your vinyl, the next thing I want you to do is take your machine and get everything set up. So put your fresh needle in there, put your thread in there, and then as you're cutting, if you end up with little scrap pieces like this, use the scrap pieces and test out your machine. So you want to make sure to do some layers together and test out your tension because you're going to see the front and back side, and so you want to make sure, you might have to mess with your tension because this is quite different than sewing with cotton. You're going to want to test that out on your machine before you're actually doing your final piece. I also want to mention this other optional step, which is to add the little tab. So this is 2 inches by 1/2 inch, and we can add this as the little tab. So if you feel like you might want to utilize that feature. My piece was a little longer than 11 inches, so I just trimmed it up. So we have 4.5 by 11. We need to fold it in half and crease the bottom so we know where that center point is. We're going to fold it in to the right spot. Now here's one of the samples that I made. So we want this to be 3.25 to 3.5 inches here. And it's helpful if you want to grab an ID or a credit card just to make sure it's fitting the way that you want it to. And then once we know we have the right size, we can crease that. And it's not going to stay that way, so that's why we need our clips. Clip it toward the edges because it does leave little dents, which kind of go away over time, but don't want those to show too much. And I am going to clip the top too, just to help us keep that flat because we are going to top stitch. Just test it out it's gonna end up being folded in half with those tops matching. So make sure that that's the right size that you want, right? So I'm grabbing an old gift card and I'm making sure that there's gonna be plenty of room. Don't forget we're gonna have seams going on the sides and we're gonna bring that in slightly, but we've got enough wiggle room in here to make sure that we have enough space for cards on the inside, but that they're not gonna be super floppy and falling out. So once we have it clipped, the first step we're gonna do is top stitch at the sewing machine. I wanted to show you really quick one of the little sample pieces that I made. I actually kind of turned it into a little pocket and I gave it to my daughter, but I was practicing with my stitches and just making sure that everything was looking good. Okay, so I want to go over a couple more things with the machine. I have been making these already, so I have a fresh needle, I have a polyester thread that matches already in my machine. You can play around with the type of feet that you choose. This is one of the kind of Teflon feet that allow for it to be smoother across vinyl or kind of like stickier kind of surfaces. So you might have one of those that came with your machine and you can kind of test out what you think will work best. I'm actually going to put this one back on my machine. The other thing I want you to do is put your stitch length up to about a 3, and that helps give you a little more space in your stitches. And then you're ready to go. Move my needle position over to the right just so that I can have a little better spot. No need to backstitch, you can if you want to, but we're going to be stitching up the sides so that will automatically lock it in. So one thing that can happen with the vinyl is it can kind of stick to the bottom of your machine, so you really got to kind of help push it through with your hands. So I'm just gently with my thumbs kind of advancing it forward. Something else I want to point out is the first one that I did a top stitch, my vinyl is directional. So I want to have my clear vinyl be on the side where these scallops are facing upward. So this is going to end up being my clear vinyl side, which means on my other top stitch side is where I'm going to put my little tab. I'm going to bring it in. A tool like a stiletto, you want to clip it into place because these kind of move around a little bit. After you make a couple of these, you'll get the hang of all these little quirks and then you'll be making these super speedy. Okay, and when you go over the tab, you want to backstitch that bad boy like crazy because if you put this on a key ring, you got to make sure it's secure. So we're going to backstitch several times over that. And you can see how it's kind of sliding. So I'm going to use my stiletto and really kind of poke it in there and keep it in its right spot. All right, now that that's done, let's head back over to the work table. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is put a little bit of fabric glue, and this is optional. We're gonna put it here in the middle. So we don't wanna put it on the edge because we don't wanna sew over it when we put our sides up. But while it's open like this, when we have, so here's one of my samples. I did not do this for this sample, and I was worried that stuff might get stuck up underneath that flap. That's why I decided to add this step, but it's optional if you have some laying around like I do. It just needs a couple little dabs of glue. This is on the back side. On the front side, I also trimmed and put my clear vinyl piece here and clip that into place. So also make sure you're not going to be sewing. So here's the edge of this, so I'm not going to be sewing over the glue. now over at the machine, we're going to stitch down, across, and back up on our clear vinyl, making sure to back stitch at the spots where there's going to be a little more stress. I know it's a little hard to see that clear vinyl, so find a spot on your machine and just make sure that you can see what you're doing. Everything is clipped into place, and then back stitch at the top like I said. All right, so now our little ID pocket is stitched into place. And now what we can do, we don't need to go back to the work table, just flip this over, match up our tops. We want to make sure everything's nice and straight. I'm going to add a couple little clips in here. And be careful in this step, go nice and slow because there are lots of layers. We've got 4 layers of vinyl, so we want to just be careful with our machine. And then we're going to go ahead and sew down both sides. For example, I have my needle all the way in the right position and I'm using the right edge of my presser foot. And I'm going to go nice and slow. I'm also going to back stitch at the top because where that's going to open and close, we want to make sure that that's back stitched and nice and secure. Let's do the other side. We're almost done. So now take a look at everything, look at the back, look at the front, make sure everything looks like it's secure. And then let's go trim it up. So it's looking good. What we're gonna do is trim this down to 1/8 of an inch and trim off all of our threads. One of the little tricks when I am cutting vinyl, because if you lay your ruler down, it's gonna move with you. So when you find your 1/8 of an inch mark, this little guy, look at it while it's at an angle, line it all up, and then lay it down like that. All right, so I've got my 1/8 of an inch mark lined up with my stitch. And then that just gives it a nice clean edge. And then once that is done, check it out. Your very own vinyl mermaid wallet.